Uninterrupted would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We would also like to pay respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today.
Welcome to Uninterrupted, the Women's Health Australia podcast where we sit down with the people shaping modern health movement and culture. I'm Sophie Howe, Head of Content. For our first episode of Uninterrupted Season 8, we are joined by Nadine Hunt, a Cairns-based triathlete who is breaking barriers both on and off the racecourse. Nadine, welcome to Uninterrupted. What is one thing in your life right now that you refuse to let be interrupted?
That's a tricky one because I don't mind interruption. I kind of just go, you know what, I'm gonna deal with this. So
I feel like that's a bit of your secret sauce, maybe.
You absolutely have to. I think as a younger person, like in my early 20s, I tended to let a lot of external things, you know, whether it's chaos, turbulence, or interruptions, really derail like my purpose. And I think, you know, a bit of experience in some years and certainly doing Ironmans, I've really learned that stuff should never derail you if you know exactly what your purpose is in life and what you need to achieve.
You know what? I love that that's your answer because that is a first for this podcast and I think that's great. Take me back to the beginning. How did triathlon first come into your life?
I think it's almost 4-5 years ago now. I fell into triathlon. I'd done kind of running prior to that and a few marathons and did a marathon 11 months postpartum of my son when I had my son in 2018 and just didn't click with running anymore. I think my mind and my body just couldn't handle the impact for whatever reason, and it was just around the time that a good friend of mine was getting Tri-Mob up and going, which is a First Nations triathlon club but also organisation and health promotion charity. And so I just wanted to get around it. You know, I'm an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman and I'm very passionate about, you know, having visibility in sports like running and triathlon because growing up in Cairns, I didn't see a lot of people like me or a lot of family members or other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people out doing these types of things, and so I thought it was a really great opportunity to get involved, and I was invited to do a relay leg of the 70.3 in Cairns, and instead of doing the running I thought, you know what, I'll do the bike leg, I'll do something different, and just jumped straight in and got a road bike and then connected with a local triathlon group in Cairns. But I reached out and was like, you know what, I'm just going to do the bike, I just need to learn how to ride a road bike, and like that's what I'm going to do, a bit of cross training. And so signed up and trained for that 90-kilometer ride and absolutely loved it. I think 6 months later I'd signed up for a triathlon training program and I was all in. So I kind of accidentally fell into the sport, I guess you could say.
So it actually happened really organically.
Absolutely. And it was great. It was probably the hardest. I remember getting off the bike of that 90 kilometers and it was just the worst feeling in the world. And so I really had no desire to get into triathlon whatsoever, but just kept showing up. And then I was like, you know what, I'll just turn up and go to the pool sessions. And, you know, everyone in the triathlon group thought I was just this really uncoordinated cyclist and no one knew that I did a bit of running. And so I think once that transition happened, it was kind of like, who is she? Like, where is she turned up from?
Was there a moment where triathlon stopped being something that you were trying out and became something that really felt like it was a part of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was not a good cyclist whatsoever when I started. Like, I literally turned up to the first group session and just fell off my bike in front of everyone stationary. Like, that was kind of the level I was at 4 years ago. And like these particular ladies who are still friends today were just so welcoming and made that initial experience for me a really positive one. But then I think once I started to get stronger and was more consistent with the sport and was like, you know what, I'll do a 70.3. Like I did a sprint try first, and then it was kind of the back end of COVID, and so a lot of events were getting cancelled, and so it kind of took, a good 12 months before I could actually do a 70.3, but I absolutely loved it. I couldn't swim more than 50 meters of the pool when I first started. And I think as an adult and particularly a new mum, it's really fun and exciting to be able to challenge yourself and learn something new. And I think, learning these new skills, it just made me tick. And I was like, I just want to keep doing this. This is just so much fun. And it's always been that kind of, how good can I get myself? Can I be better than yesterday? And yeah, I think that's I kind of just got stuck. And then, I did my first 70.3 and signed up for my second 70.3 in 2001, I think it was, or 2002. I had been training with the group, and there was a few close friends that were actually training for the Ironman that year, but I was kind of doing all the training with them. I'd kind of peel off early if they had longer rides and longer runs and things like that. I just really enjoyed that process and never thought about doing an Ironman. I kind of thought that's a bit extreme, that's a bit crazy. Like 70.3 is a pretty, that's a pretty good distance for me. But yeah, the week of the Cairns Ironman back then, I kind of came off my bike and it was a really close call. And I was fine and my bike was fine, but it kind of just reshaped how I approached life. And there were a lot of big life changes for me during that period. And yeah, after discussions with my, close friends at the time, it was like, you know what, maybe I'll just like upgrade and do the Ironman. I hadn't ridden more than 100 Ks, or I knew I could run a marathon because I'd done a heap of those, and I was like I'll just take my time in the swim. And yeah, just randomly upgraded to do my first Ironman kind of 3 days out. So that kind of whole experience was completely life-changing for me. I think obviously I started and I finished that Ironman, and I don't know, just that whole day endurance event, I was just like, I love this. I love this. Something about being able to endure and be out there and just be within yourself for that period of time completely got me hooked. And I was like, you know what? I'm coming back to do this next year, and I'm going to train properly for it and give it a crack. And so I think, yeah, that kind of period in my life, just something shifted, but it shifted for the better, because my life certainly hasn't been the same ever since.
What do you think was the biggest hurdle when you first started?
I think initially, because my son was so young, I was kind of finding that balance and that guilt, because you do have to put in so much time. And so I think initially it was kind of like, okay, I need to make this work without causing too much interruption in his life. And I think the better I got at that, and as the years passed, like he's 7 now, it's just a complete flip story. It's kind of what I'm doing is actually completely changing my family structure and is influencing my son and my community, and in the most positive way, that I should not be feeling guilty about this. And that's kind of like a default sometimes we do as mums, but now it's quite the opposite. I just think like what a privilege it is that I'm able to get up and do this every day, and that my son thinks it's so normal that his mum does Ironmans. And it's kind of getting to that point. It's kind of the struggle at the beginning, but then once you realize and can kind of sit back and see how the sport really shifts like the family structure in such a positive way, I think it's such a great thing. But like my partner, he's doing the Cairns Ironman as well, and so I think that's always been the difficult challenge, I guess. Like I co-parent with my son with my ex-partner, and so we have my son every second week, and so it's like, how can we utilize the week that I don't have him to just train so that when I do have him, I can spend time with him and he can be priority. And so it's taken us a few years to really find that balance, but I'm really proud of how we approach things with life and with training and with work and things like that. I think it's just such a positive influence in our life.
Totally. That's awesome. For anyone listening who might be curious to join a triathlon, but they're nervous, they don't know where to begin, what would you tell them to not worry about?
I think it's like not to worry about performance. I think the sport needs to be looked at as a lifestyle, not as chasing performance. I think if you have an opportunity to find the best version of yourself by doing something difficult, I think triathlon or endurance sport is definitely the way to go. And, I didn't jump straight into triathlon. I was like dabbled on the bike first, or I gave running, I was a runner before. And so I think a lot of people kind of start like doing a team or a relay, but then it's just kind of connecting with people in the community. You develop really strong friendships and relationships with like-minded people that positivity just has such a strong flow-on effect. So I think just showing up, it doesn't have to be all disciplines. It just could be doing a team at first. It kind of just gets you in that door in a non-intimidating way, just to dabble in to see if it's your thing or not. But it's certainly a good lifestyle, I think, rather than like that performance focus, because it can be very intimidating if that's how you're coming into the sport.
Now, I want to go back to 2023, which was when you became the first ever First Nations woman from Australia to compete at the Ironman World Championships. When you look back on that now, what does that achievement mean to you? Because it's quite an achievement.
I think for a long time, it took a while to accept that, because I was, like, we're in 2023, like, how has no other First Nations woman been to Kona? What are we doing in this sport? But I think adapting that lifestyle of triathlon has really allowed me to represent my mob. Like, visibility is everything. I remember doing my first Ironman and feeling like I was the only woman within my space on the beach. Like, it's one feeling like you're the only woman, but then to feel like you're the only Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person, like, you can really like feel intimidated. But I think being able to qualify and race at Kona and finish Kona, I think, there was never any pressure for me, because it was like, well, if you don't finish, you're not the first First Nations woman to to do a World Champs. But it was kind of like, what, like, I know I can get to the finish. I've put in the work, like, I've done the training. I know if I can execute my plan, I'm going to get to the finish. And this is an absolute privilege that I should not take lightly, to be able to represent my mob through Tri-Mob on a world stage. And that meant so much more to me than my finish time. That was very much the focus, was like, for me to finish, what impact will this have on other young girls or other young women back home in my community or in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and how can that get them to do something outside of the norm? So I think being able to take the pressure of finish time out of the equation and focus on the power of getting to that finish and what that message would send was so powerful for me, and it's an absolute privilege. And that, like, I can't wait until the next Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman gets to go to Kona and do that race.
Have you had any young girls or women reach out to you after seeing your story?
Yeah, like a lot of mums as well. And like, obviously I'm well connected with Tri-Mob. Like, I'm on the board of directors, and I'm also like coaching one of the IRONMAN athletes this year, and so very much involved. But there's always people reaching out or asking questions, or just I remember after the Ironman documentary was kind of released on YouTube, like, it was just such a positive to know that, like, what I was doing, it was visible for people like me. And so I think sometimes, they they always say you can't be what you can't see. And so if by me doing something is allowing someone else to believe that they can do something, I think there's so much power in that. And even through the work with TriMob, like seeing the amount of women, Indigenous women, doing Ironmans is just remarkable in the last 2-3 years. But also like locally in Cairns, like I was just looking earlier today and I was like, there's 6 women that I know personally that are doing the Cairns Ironman this year. I was like, I didn't know one 4 years ago. And so I think there's like, you know, things are changing, and I think more women, particularly mums, are realizing, you know, like this is something that if I want to do it, I can do it as well. Like there's no limitations. If you kind of take that time pressure away from things and just make it become a lifestyle or a process, then all of this stuff is so achievable for anyone.
Definitely. And it takes, you know, inspiring individuals like yourself who are willing to share their story and talk to others who might want to follow in their footsteps to make that space so much more accessible. So thank you so much for doing that. You're currently training for the next Ironman Cairns 2026. As someone based in Cairns, this really brings your story home. What does this event mean to you personally?
It's the 15th year of Ironman Cairns, which just blows my mind, because I remember when it first came to Cairns, like what this event has done for the Cairns community and increased not just people in triathlon, but just running and walking, and I guess the infrastructure that has kind of come in place that has allowed more people to safely run in spaces, particularly women, I think is really powerful. But yeah, it's like, I know I'm biased, but it's most certainly like my favorite event. This will be my 3rd Cairns Ironman, but I've always kind of been here and involved and gone out and watched. And so yeah, it'll be really special. Like I'm really excited, and to know how many other local women are out there, and to also have my partner out there racing, I think it's just going to be a very special day. But like I was born and raised in Cairns, and I'm very much connected to the land and the seas up here, so that there is certainly a very special place that this race has in my heart, but also in my spirit, that gets me excited, because it's not just about the race, it's about like what I get to experience over the course of that day.
Walk us through a typical training week for you. What does preparing for an Ironman actually look like day to day?
Like obviously training every day, and I think when I'm in a bigger build of things, so when hours start to increase, I usually have one rest day just to kind of balance the fatigue. But yeah, I guess a standard week, a Monday could be a rest day or a recovery swim. Usually a Tuesday, Thursday is a double training day. So I'll have a bike and a run, and then I'll swim Wednesday, Friday, and then the weekends is kind of where I cram as much training in as I can with a long ride. So, you know, last Sunday was kind of my biggest ride leading into Cairns, which was 6 hours, and then a run off the bike, followed by a long run the next day. And so it can kind of vary between, you know, anything between 10 to up to 16 to 17 hours. But like you can certainly quite easily be caught up on what other people are doing. You know, you can jump on on social media and see other athletes kind of training 20 plus hours a week, and sometimes that can bring a lot of pressure. But I think, you know, like I'm 38 this year and I've got a son, and I just finished my master's and a coaching business. I'm like, you know what, like that's just not realistic for people. And so I very much stay in my lane and do what I can do, and I have a fantastic coach who keeps me grounded, and I just go, it's all about consistency and doing the best that you can do. And I like that, because then I'm not kind of feeling smashed every day, but also know realistically what I can do come race day.
What do you think people underestimate the most about preparing for an Ironman?
Honestly, the impact. Yeah, I know I said it before, but like this sport is so much more than performance. You know, it's so easy to get caught up on the times and the performance and things like that. But the real power within the sport is its ability to change families and communities, like in a positive way. I just love that as a mum, as a partner, as a coach, that people get to see me do something that I love and that I'm really passionate about, and that it's a really healthy lifestyle. So I think if people can see that side of things, that it's a really great opportunity to be able to represent whoever you want to represent, if that's women, if that's your family, if that's your culture or your people, that is so much more powerful and important than a time.
When the training does get hard, because I mean, you mentioned a 6-hour bike ride, I'm sure there are moments where it gets really difficult to keep going. Is there, like, what do you say to yourself in those difficult moments, or what do you think of to motivate yourself?
I'm really fortunate. Motivation hasn't ever been something that I've found difficult. I think the hardest part of Ironman training for me has been able to show up fully in all the different roles that I have, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to not put that pressure on yourself to be 100% a great partner, 100% a great mom, 100% this, that it's all about the balance, and, you know, being able to be good at all aspects of your life and give training what it needs is certainly the hardest part of Ironman training. You know, doing the sessions itself or racing on the day, I feel like they're the easy bits, but it's kind of showing up fully in all the other roles that kind of makes it a little bit tricky and hard.
You're also a triathlon coach. What do you love about helping other people come into the sport?
I do online coaching, and I just love the connections, and, you know, a lot of the people that I coach are so capable and talented. Like, it's not a matter of like what they can and can't do. It's a matter of being there to support them, to be able to show them what they're capable of, and instilling that self-belief. And I think when things click for athletes, you know, because they're so consistent, they're doing the work, but it's when they wake up one race day and go, you know what, like, the data is there, I've been doing all of this in training, I'm capable of hitting those numbers, and then they go and execute it in a race. It just kind of seeing that transition of like self-belief for me as a coach is so rewarding. Like, it's, you know, I've been doing it for a long time, and I think that's definitely kind of been the biggest thing that I am so lucky to get out of it, is kind of seeing that transition of like, yeah, like, they're a talented athlete, but that now they can see like how good they are because of all the work that they've put in. And, you know, most of the time that's all we need. We just need a coach to believe in us, and then to show us, like, help us see for ourselves what we're capable of.
For some of our readers who may be training for the Cairns Ironman, if you had one piece of advice to give them, what would it be?
The best one I was given was, life was just absolutely chaos and all this stuff was happening, and it was like the week of a race and I'm ready to have a meltdown, which I think a lot of us coming into next week, you know, things are going to get messy and, you know, you could get all panicked. But I think it's really important that kind of deep within it all and within yourself, amongst the chaos, there's always calm. There's always a place that you can tap into. And so it's really important to just allow yourself to kind of visit it, whether it's during preparation of your race week or if it's on race morning when you're just so nervous. You know, every race, regardless of if it's at home here in Cairns or someone else, I always make sure, even if I'm running late, that I take my time to get down to the water and to ground myself within the sand and the ocean, and if it's 15 seconds or if it's 30 seconds, just to find some calm, because, you know, all the hard work's done now. So it's just about, you know, waiting for the gun and getting going and just enjoying it and sticking with your plan and keeping calm. You know, I think sometimes we want to resist things that go wrong, and I've certainly learnt during this sport that acceptance is everything in triathlon, because you're never going to have a perfect day, and that is totally fine. It doesn't mean you can't have a great race. So accepting difficult times throughout the race and letting it pass, accept, deal with it, let it pass, and then you keep powering forward.
We are going to move on to the uninterrupted round, where I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and I just want your first instinct response. Are you ready?
Yeah.
First question, 1 word to describe race day.
Home.
Swim, bike, or run?
Run.
The hardest part of Ironman training.
Showing up for all the different roles or different hats.
The best piece of advice you've ever received.
Deep inside yourself, underneath all the turbulence, is a calm, untouchable place. Allow yourself to visit it. One of my coaches gave me that advice, and it's honestly something that I've carried through training, racing, motherhood, grief, anything in life in general. It's so adaptable. Yeah, it's a great one.
What is one thing that you wish more people understood about endurance sport?
I'm probably repeating myself, but this endurance sport is so much more than performance. It's about the positive impact that you can have on other people.
I think seeing people like you achieve so much and, be so able to embrace not only the uncomfortable, but embrace being interrupted. It's incredible to have voices and people out there like you. So thank you so much. If you love this episode, follow Uninterrupted and share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more conversations like this, head to womenshealth.com.au or follow Women's Health Australia on Instagram at Women's Health Oz. Thanks for listening to Uninterrupted.